Then Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish, saying, I called to the Lord out of my distress, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. You cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the floods surrounded me. All your waves and your billows passed over me. Then I said, I am driven away from your sight. How shall I look again upon your holy temple? The waters closed in over me, and the deep surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped around my head at the roots of the mountains. I went down to the land whose bare bars closed upon me forever. Yet you brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. As my life was ebbing away, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you, into your holy temple. Those who worship vain idols forsake their true loyalty, but I with the voice of thanksgiving will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed I will pay. Deliverance belongs to the Lord. Then the Lord spoke to the fish, and it spewed Jonah out upon the dry land.
The word of the Lord. I have the great joy to introduce our speaker tonight. It is Mark Schumacher. Mark Schumacher is leading our Parish Growth and Life ministry team here at church as well. He's a co-leader for our adult forum that meets on Sunday morning at 9:15 till 10:15, and this group as well is studying with us the Jonah story. And Mike is here to share his story and connect it with Jonah, the second chapter. So thanks, Mark, for being here and sharing your thoughts with us.
Please join me in prayer. From Psalm 19, verse 14, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. I'd like to start my message with a short story from deep in my past. Take a hard look at this picture. So I got to, in case you don't even recognize me, this is me back in 1985 at my first job out of college as a junior high teacher and athletic director at Our Savior Lutheran School in Aiea, Hawaii. I had the privilege of coaching a high school baseball team and being the junior high athletic director and teacher. You know, flowing hair, mustache. Anyone remember Magnum PI? So that was really big out there. You know, Tom Selleck, it was shot in Hawaii. Well, living the dream in paradise sounds great, doesn't it? Well, there was one big problem. I wasn't very good at it, and that's the truth. You know, I stuck it out in teaching for about 4 years, and I'd say I struggled mightily with classroom discipline. This was junior high, so you can just kind of imagine some of the shenanigans, that they pulled on a first-year teacher like me from Minnesota. No less. I had some run-ins with some parents, just minor stuff, but, I wallowed in self-pity. And so it's kind of something that I have been prone to my whole life. And I always wondered, so then I also would kind of fall into it must be the parents. Or I have a few bad eggs in my classroom. That must be it. Or it's a cultural thing. Or maybe it's an unsupportive administration. So that was kind of where I was at back then. Before my second year in Hawaii, one of the third grade teachers offered to trade teaching her physical education class for one of my classes. And I thought, well, it's only third graders. If I can't do this, I'm the athletic director. So several days a week, I would show up at the door of their classroom and take them out to the playground for PE class. So class would go like this. I would begin by having them run a lap around the playground and then do some warm-up exercises. And we had two kids, Donald and Ryan, and they are terribly overweight. They were almost 200 pounds in the third grade. And if you know anything about Hawaii, obesity is kind of a problem in the Hawaiian culture. And these were two young victims. And they could barely run a lap, and they couldn't do sit-ups. And, I insisted on everybody doing sit-ups, like the great teacher I was. So one day, some of the kids this was early on, some of the kids were making fun of Donald. And I said, maybe you should encourage them. And in junior high, this would elicit probably more criticism or maybe even get ignored. But to my surprise, some of the kids started saying, come on, Donald, you can do it. And pretty soon the whole class started doing it that first time. And then it kind of became our thing when we would do warm-ups, that everybody would encourage Donald. And this was the kids doing, believe me, not mine. And one day, when I came to pick up the kids, there was a little girl, I call her the self-elected class spokesperson. She came up to me and she goes, Donald has a present for you. So I'll show you Donald's present. And I kept this hat, but it was a hat, and you can read what it says. And then if you have your I don't know if my name's in the program, but Schumacher isn't spelled like that. So Donald marches up to me, and he gave me this wrap box, and he said, "Happy birthday, Mr. Schumacher." And inside was this hat that said, Mr. Shoemarker, Shoemarker. And as we were walking out to the playground, this same little girl came up to me and whispered, she goes, "It isn't really your birthday, is it?" And I think he misspelled Mr. Schumacher. And I said, yeah, but shh, let's keep it quiet. So what's the lesson here? How does this relate to Jonah? This wasn't the ministry I imagined, third grade PE. This was beneath me. Yet even in my incompetence, my arrogance as a deeply flawed teacher, God somehow used me to minister to this wonderful kid, Donald. And I guess the message is, despite our shortcomings, God ministers to us and at the same time through us in mission fields we didn't even imagine. Let's call them the third grade PE mission fields. And in our arrogance and self-pity, we don't even realize sometimes what God's doing. Pastor Stefan wanted me to talk about Jonah 2 and how God uses incomplete people to complete his mission. And it took a little searching for me and rereading the chapter and the rest of the book of Jonah, which you can do very quickly. It's pretty short. But the closer I read, the more I saw myself in Jonah, and I think you will too. Jonah had a very flawed view of God, and his faith and his mission are on, his faith and his perception of his mission are on full display in Jonah 2. So let's take a look. I don't expect you to read this, but you can kind of see, it's kind of hard on this, but I highlighted all of the I's, me's, and my's. There are 25 out of the 200 words in Jonah 2 are personal pronouns, I, me, and my. Jonah was self-word rather than God-word focused. And in Jonah's mind, another thing about it is that God's actions in Jonah's mind are somehow predicated by something Jonah does. So in verse 1, he says, "In my distress, I called it to the Lord, and he answered me." So he seems to somehow think that it's him, sort of calling the shots. Verse 7, "When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you." Again, kind of a flawed view of how this works. Another thing you'll notice when you dig into Jonah 2 is that nowhere do we see anything that really resembles an apology. He kind of alludes, to God saving him out of the depths from this fish, but he doesn't say, I'm really sorry for what I did. Then you get to the end of the chapter, And Jonah starts comparing himself to those idol worshipers. Nowhere in Jonah 2 do you see the word Nineveh mentioned. It's not very compassionate. He doesn't plead for Nineveh. And the very thing that he asked from God, mercy and grace, he's not asking of that for Nineveh. So, most of us know the end of the book of Jonah. Jonah goes out into the mission field, probably the third grade PE of mission fields, a place he didn't think, it was, what was worthy of him, it was beneath him. And lo and behold, Nineveh repents, and God has mercy on Nineveh. So, my wish for you is to consider this reality during the season of Lent, which is a season of self-reflection. Think about the third grade PE mission fields that aren't the mission fields of your dreams, that God's calling to you, and consider the example of Jonah. All through our lives, God is developing us, and it isn't until you look back in your life that you really realize, what some of these lessons are. A good example of a mission field right here at Christus Victor, for me, has been interfaith relationships. I don't know how much you know about Hawaii, but it's a place of great diversity. The students in our Lutheran school back then were 10% Lutheran and about 50% churched. And this was really my first exposure to a culture like this. You go to the grocery store and you're the only white guy. So it was different, and I really actually came to appreciate the culture and missed it. And I even taught a class that was called Hawaiiana, which is something the state required, but it was all about the Hawaiian culture and migration patterns and things like that. But in looking back, I really believe that God was teaching me how to show love, compassion, and understanding, to my neighbor. And God continues to bless me through the professional and personal relationships that I've had the privilege of developing through my family and through my work. Been able to travel, all over the place, in this globe. And we've actually put some of that to use in our study here at Christus Victor. So for me, this has been a mission field. We've invited some guest speakers to come in, a friend of mine who's Muslim. We invited another friend of mine who's Hindu. And the whole point was to understand our neighbor and show them Christian compassion. I mean, we weren't trying to convert them. We were just trying to show them that, we really understand you. And show them love and compassion, which is something that Christus Victor is very good at. So, I just want to wrap this up and say, let's pray that God continues to minister to us while He's ministering through us. And as we spread the message, let's spread the message about the Savior who died and rose again for our sins. Amen.